What's going on, everybody? You're now watching Tell the Story Doc on All of Life TV. And today, what do I say every week? I'm excited. I got a real brother on today, and I'm not just saying that because we both light-skinned. I'm saying that because he is a brother of mine. I do look at him like a brother, and we also in the same fraternity, you know? He's a way better fraternity brother than me, though. Like, he serves his chapter. I'm not even active. But anyway, I say all of that to roll out the carpet for my man, Trevor Chin. What's up, bro?
What's going on, good brother? Man, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, man. You know I had to get you on here, man. So where do we start? Where do we start with Trev? I always come up with some random thing, but I don't know if we have a random thing. The first conversation I remember us having, though, is talking about media and social media and like stuff that we were doing through during the pandemic. And y'all reached out, you and Charlie reached out, and man, I was like, me? Like, what? How y'all even know about me? I ain't doing that down here, man.
Your stuff clean, Doc. Your stuff clean. Look, even your backdrop, the ministry of backdrop is popping, Doc.
Hey,
you know what
man,
I mean? You doing it.
You do what you can, bro. Look, I tell you, when you don't actually have a church, at the time, I didn't even know if I had a church. So I was like, let me just get as creative as possible. But man, I feel like ever since that conversation, man, we've been A1, man. And then us connecting on the Creek. I mean, not the Creek. What am I talking about? On the Breathe Retreat.
Breathe Retreat. Yeah.
It all rhymes.
They rhyme.
Yeah. On the Breathe Retreat was a big thing, man. We got some good time with one another, man. And I've just been impressed by you and blessed by you. And also, like, our wives are friends now. And that's a whole nother thing. So
yeah, they talk more than we do. I be hearing more about what's going on with identity, more than a little bit, Doc. Yeah, because you know what I mean. Because we were supposed to be going down there where we were going. Man, it's been a privilege, bro.
I be in the bed. I be like, who you texting? Oh, it's his mail. I'm like, oh man, all right, cool. So, bro, listen, if anybody follows you, man, you are a man who wears many hats, but you're a man of many talents. And I know that people probably consume a lot of the things that you do and produce with your giftings. But where did it all start, man? What's the story that Trev has that maybe people don't know about, and kind of relate that to like your work in ministry and where you are as a pastor, worship leader, artist, all that stuff?
Yeah, man. Well, again, like I said, honestly, man, thanks for having me, bro. This is super exciting. I was excited when I started seeing your stuff pop, and then I was like, "Dang, I mean, he done having all these people on, like, you know what I mean? I'll give me little old me. I appreciate that." Nah, but yeah, man, it's been a journey, man. We were kind of laughing and joking a little bit, Jimmy, just before this, the journey continues, if you will. But man, back in the late 90s, me and my mom moved to Jersey, and my grandmother started taking me to church with her. And it was the typical Wednesday Bible study, Thursday rehearsal, Saturday rehearsal, Friday youth night, 2 services on Sunday, all that kind of stuff. So got really deeply involved there. But even before then, my grandfather planted a church from Jamaica in Patterson, and Glory Gospel. And they're still rolling to this day. But but man, just like some of my earliest memories, like now I'm at my kid's age, I just remember like my grandfather praying all night long. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I did not know both of our granddads were pastors. I had no clue.
Word.
That.
Word.
That's
awesome.
I
mean, you got a lot of sermon collections and all. I ain't got none of that. I got his Bible though. But man, I was just in church like for a long time, man. And my grandmother was an organ player, and man, just I remember I used to stay at his house a couple nights a week, and my grandmother got off work at 11 o'clock at night. So around 7:30, 8 o'clock, he'll be prepping for bed, and we'll go. And man, he would pray from like bedtime all the way up until the time it was time to go drive to go pick his wife up. And man, it was just an inspiration, man. And just so I remember that. Fast forward, I get to Jersey. I'm with my grandmother, and I'm like, yo, like it just kind of makes sense to be in a church with her. I'm down the roll. She's going all the time, but maybe early. I think it was like 2000. One of the ministers at that church hit me like, yo, I was just in the hallway at a random Bible study. Just got out the bathroom. He was like, man, what you do? I was like, I was taking piano lessons, but like I was very bad. Like it wasn't good. It was just I was just very bad. But he was like, man, what you? I said, I play piano a little bit. He was like, man, well, come play me a song. So we went to the upper room. That's on Everything I Love. That's what it was called, the upper room. And man, I played It Is Well With My Soul, and I might have played for like 30 seconds. He walked out the room, just left me in there, and came back in. Maybe about 10 minutes later, I was like, well, you got me in here playing. This is some Joe Jackson stuff. You just left. He came back in. He was like, man, listen, man, I just talked to the pastor. And I told him, we were looking for a piano player for the male choir. So, I told him that we found one. So rehearsal's going to be starting in. He'll probably reach out to you next Wednesday. So I started, man, that was my first time I got to play for a choir. Started at that church. And did that for about a year. Things kind of went left, and I was a kid. Now, mind you, I'm also communicating that I was a child in 2000. But fast forward to 2003, that same minister left that church to go take over another church in Philly called Calvary Bible, and man called me his name is Doug Logan, but he called me and was like, man, I want you to come over with me. I was like, man, I was a junior in high school, sophomore in high school, I'm not, forget qualified. Like I know 2 songs. Like I literally could play 2 church songs. He was like, man, I don't care about all that. Just come on over. Sat down with my mom. My mom took true story. My mom took a picture of his license. You know what I mean? Just cause, you know what I mean? But, and man, I went over.
Really good day. A really good thing to do.
I appreciate that. You know what I mean? Because now when I was a junior high school, spend the night at Joker's houses for the weekend, doc. This is I wouldn't let Jokers do that today. Anyway.
And it started with him being like, "Hey, what do you do? Like, come over here. Let's play a piano."
This can go crazy.
But God bless Doug Logan.
Yeah, man. So, man, that started around 2003, 2004. Started like a deep dive into discipleship. I started to say it, but like, he was a barber. He had a barbershop, but he knew, if you don't know, Willingboro, New Jersey produced some of the most amazing musicians that are out rocking right to this day. Adam Blackstone, Eric Wortham, Smurf, and I can name folk for days that came out of Willingboro. And there was Todd, and another real big one is Todd Tribbett, who was in Camden. And man, Todd Tribbett would go down to Pastor Doug's barbershop when he was doing, and he had like breakout Fridays, and the band would come in play in the barbershop. So that 2004, 2005, I would go to his house. It was a group of us. We would go to his house on the weekends. Friday after school, we'll be there till Sunday night. And then when it was a no work Monday situation, Todd Tribbett's rehearsals were on Sunday night. So we went over to his dad's church and then got to sit in rehearsal. And like, now Pastor Doug couldn't sing a lick, couldn't play or nothing. Musically, he's really, really bad. Like really, really bad. Like really, really bad. But he has such an ear for music.
I'm clipping this up.
Yeah, you got to clip it up. But listen, but when it comes to the Joker's ear, oh my goodness, the Joker got an ear like no other. We've wrote a bunch of songs together just because of his songwriting stuff and his ear stuff is crazy. But he introduced us in this music space. So we have like the conundrum of discipleship, intense discipleship, fatherhood. You know what I mean? Like I said, I was a senior in high school. A lot of intentional time, challenge and growth, because it got to the point we was doing our discipleship was on Tuesday mornings at like 6 a.m. and I lived 30 minutes away. So me and Curtis Dunlap from Epiphany, Philly, man, I was going to Kurt's house. We was driving up 130 and getting that discipleship. So it was just, it all started heavy there, and we lived at that church. We did everything. We were deeply involved in the community. That's really, really where my heart began to grow for ministry, and to be in the ministry space. Just like in those early days. Just grew a heart for for Kensington area, Philly. Like, man, we was down the street from K&A. Folks talk about it now, but like we was out there and still have a lot of those relationships to this day. But anyways, fast forward, like because of that, like pushed me to go to Bible college. I went to Philadelphia Biblical University at the time, which is now Cairn. Right graduating out of there, Pastor Doug called me again, like, yo, I'm planning a church in Camden. I want you to roll with me. I said, hey, I done got my degree now, Doc. I done got a couple job offers on the table. I ain't you can miss me with the ministry stuff, man. And I wanted to. I was doing Trevor recruitment at the time. I'm sorry if this is going too long, but I was in Trevor recruitment at the time for that college, and I knew for a fact that this is what I wanted to do. There was perks. I got to travel the country. I got to talk about the stuff. I was out. So my boss at the time hit me with like, yo, I got a job for you, like upon graduation. I told Pastor Doug, nah, I'm good. He was like, man, well, at least pray about it. Just pray about it. And I was like, nah, it's cool. But I told him I was. So one night I was like, you know what, Lord, like, listen, I really want to do this job. If this ain't for me, then just take it. But it was for me. It was crafted for me. Mm-hmm. The next day, Pastor Doug called me back, and I was like, hey, look, nah, it's still a no for me. I went to work, and my boss told me, he was like, yo, I'm sorry. Like, that job is no longer there. It's no longer yours. I was like, man, we've been working on this for 3 months. Yeah. He was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. So, long story short, man, I called Pastor Doug back like, hey, actually, you know what I mean? Is that position still open? But man, got to jump in with him and Ernest Grant in Camden back in 2011, and man, it's been a fast paced journey ever since then, man. Did that. How far you want me in the story to go? I
got a couple of things. I got a couple of things I want to pick up on. So, you know, a lot of guys, you see a lot of, man, I grew up in this space and then I exited this space and went to another space and I ran into something that was brand new that I never experienced before. And then I kind of stayed in this until I could graduate to another thing. But you have had this, it's almost like this theme where you have an older man who truly cares for you and your development, who's kind of walking, you know, with you in your story with Pastor Doug, right? Like the fact that you could say you've known him since you were a child, and he probably still, if he calls you right now, you know, whatever he says holds a lot of weight. That's a really, really, really big thing.
Absolutely.
Like, have you, like, how do you feel about that relationship? What is it like to have him as, I guess you would say he's your spiritual father, right? In a sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How was it to have him like in that relationship?
Man, so one, I'll say that he was my uncle before he was my spiritual father. Like, he was Uncle Doug. Like, when we would go out, like, and it was some of that stuff that was just super impactful. Like, we would go out and I'd be like, man, he'd be like, yeah, yo, this is my nephew. Like, doggone straight. Like, yeah, like, and there's a level of like, yo, I'm that fatherhood piece, like, that just oftentimes young boys miss. Like, to have that to have a dude that say like, yo, not like, yo, he's with me. This is like, he like a lot of that stuff early on, especially in that season of my life when things were kind of just a little rocky with me and my dad. To have someone that would step in the gap for me in some of those more difficult moments. And I'm telling you that went through the lengths for the sake of development. Let me. I want to point out that I'm not being facetious. Like, I literally knew, as the deer, it is well with my soul, and precious Lord. Those are the only 3 church songs I had in my what's the name. He pulled me in for development. He didn't pull me in because I can do something. And that's where it's difficult now, especially at this phase where folks like, yeah, Trevor, can you come in and do? Can you come in and do? Can you come in and do? Man, Pastor Doug hit me with some, yo, come in and let me walk with you, develop you. Yeah. Got me around some of the best musicians, got me around some of the best worship leaders ever. I mean, I like, yo, dude, I done met him because of Pastor Doug. I've been able to be in rooms because of him. And then the other really, really big thing for me that convicts me a lot of ways now is Pastor Doug just turned 51. I'm talking about something 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was 31 years old
Yeah.
with that level of development and vision, long-term vision. That's bro.
That's crazy.
It's
because both of us are older than 31. And
come on, man.
You know, as much as we think we would do something like that, practically, it's like, man, we got kids, we got this, we got that. So he had vision, you know, for something.
It was so much vision. And Golf's going on record and say he ain't had no money. So he's cutting hair on the weekends for a couple like big time cats, record producers and stuff like that, to be able to, he was doing home runs to be able to, and then we would go over to 15th and Spring Garden. There was a homeless shelter, the Mission. I forget my man's name. But we would go over there and we would play 2-3 songs, and then he would pick up sandwiches and food so we can eat for the weekend. Like the resourcefulness. He refinanced his house so he can make a studio in the basement. Like I'm jumping the story a little bit, but like we did an album back in 2005, had Ty Tribbett on it, had Terry Tribbett on it, had Chris Stevens, like all them folks was on the album, produced the album for us. Like, yo, there was a lot of development, and man, at 31 years old, this guy had such a vision for discipleship and care. It got to a point, there was like 10 of us on a weekend sleeping at his house to get ready for church the next morning. It's wild. That's man. Great. Wow. So
and he's already got kids too. You know?
Yeah, already has kids. Has kids at the time. Yeah, it wasn't a lack thing. So, man, that was extremely encouraging to see, to think through development piece, to think through what's it look like to drag someone along with you. Even when it got a little older, it was like, I don't want to go. Like he was coming, I'm telling you, he came to pick me up from school, all that kind of stuff. So, man, so that burdened me. And I think that piece for development burdened me over the years, and still, even with some of this stuff that I'm doing now, and I don't want to jump ahead, but some of the stuff I'm doing now is like, is a direct relation to someone believed in a future me. So much so that they were willing to invest for 5, 6, 7 years before they would even get anything out of me. Yeah, you know what I mean. And it showed that it wasn't even just for the work. Just for them, because he said it when we first started in Camden. He was like, "Look, next year y'all can go wherever y'all want, but I'm asking y'all for 5 years. Like if y'all can commit to 5 years, like he was like, yo, I know what y'all got in y'all." He'd know that he did the development for the church at large, not just for what he can benefit from. So yeah.
So when he called you after you graduated college and all that stuff, he was calling you to do what? Like what phase is that in the story?
Yeah, so he was in the beginning processes of planning Epiphany Camden.
Okay.
And asked me to come along to be the worship and creative arts coordinator at the time, but to go through an eldership process to discern if that was next steps. So that's what that phase looked like. So it was the time at the 45th Street Pub. It was the coaching stuff. It was daily meetings. It was daily connections. It was us getting, our seminary degree stuff popping, at least started. So it was all of that. So we did that for about 2 years, and then we got ordained in January 2013. So went through a deep development process, a bunch of books, a lot of which I'm looking at right this second, that I still have that have been sitting on this shelf since 2013. Yeah.
Hey, we all read those books because we have to, and then
yeah,
and they just kind of sit there for a while until somebody
man. Indeed. So yeah, man, that was the offer. And then that's really when I had started the worship leader space when we were in Philly. That was 2003 to 2007. I went away to college 2007 to do all that, but or to finish college rather. But this new space was more of a development space because it was nobody. It was just me. So building a team from scratch, you know what I mean? Having a vision for your team. What does discipleship look like for your team? What does care look like for your team? How do you grow your team? How do you have some of those same levels of investment? Like, hey, listen, like, there was a guy who played a trombone, and I was like, yo, well, but he don't want to play trombone. He wanted to, you know what I mean, learn how to play keys. So, all right, cool. Well, come on, and like we can play on Sundays, and we can kind of develop from there. So a lot of that happened starting like that 2011 timeline, just because it was a brand new church plant, and man, I was there for 5 years, and man, by God's grace, man, it was great. I looked up on my last Sunday when I took the team out for food, man, it was like 25, 26 people on that team, man.
Wow.
Between the band and the singers, and so it was just great to be able to see that level of investment pay off like that. And of that team, like there's another guy, one of the guys that was on that same team, then planted a church. You know what I mean? This year, another one of those guys, yeah, like another one of those guys is serving at his church in the worship department back in Jersey. So it's been it's been good. It's been good.
Has it hit you yet? And this is kind of related to a question I have for Derek and for Brandon. Has it hit you yet that you were a part of like such a integral moment in church planting, church leadership, urban church thing that we talk about so much? Like, does it really hit you that you are a part of that like special moment that a lot of dudes from all over the country still think about what happened in Camden, what happened in Philly? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Or is it kind of just like, nah, this is just how we live?
So it used to be that. It used to be like, this is just how it is. But I recognize that I do. It did hit me so much so, like I'm the youngest guy in giving the whole thing. And I wasn't the lead guy. Like I was in the worship space, executive pastor. So, but I just kind of been around. Man, I walk around like the arrogant little brother. Like, I'm like, yeah, you know who you don't know who my peoples is. You know what I mean? Like this is, it's good. Like, and the people, especially being in Baltimore, folks said like, yeah, I read a book called Manhood Restored, and I read the author's bio, and it said Epiphany Fellowship, but they're in Philly. Are y'all anywhere related? Like, boy, questions like that, like. Yeah. Man, and then it's been crazy to be in conversations from other people that have been so deeply impacted by the work of Pastor E, Pastor Doug, Pastor Brandon, you know what I mean, Pastor Derek, Pastor Charles, like all of them. Like, so it was a man in the church planting encyclopedia in 20 years. Like that movement is going to be communicated, and man, it's a privilege. There's a level of confidence and a foundation that I walk in now because of the reps and the time that was spent then. Some of my rhythms and some of the habits, some of the I made a joke about the books that I read, but like, man, I was able to just be poured into so much over the years that like now it just, I mean, if it feels like I'm able to flow easy, man, just because of the foundation and God's grace, man. So it's been a journey.
Think about this, like most guys, I say most guys a lot. I don't know this to be true, but in my mind, or at least maybe let me speak from my perspective. If you're a guy like me, you start in your mid-20s, you try to get some, people in your life that's going to mold you and build you up and all of that. You learn by making a whole lot of mistakes. And by the time you get to your mid-30s, going into your 40s, you're kind of like, oh, man, I kind of got a rhythm. Like I remember a guy telling me, like, make mistakes in your 20s, build habits in your 30s, perfect those in your 40s, and by the time you're in your 50s, you're in your prime. But you and many guys like you who are in kind of this I don't even know what I call it, almost like a boot camp type discipleship thing, right? Where it's like, man, your uncle slash spiritual father has been in your life for 20 odd years. So it's like you're not starting in your 20s. Like you're making mistakes in your 20s, but you're making them at an accelerated rate. So now that you're 30 something, right? Like you've experienced probably more than the dude who this is his first thing and he's 35. You know what I'm saying? So I think, man, that's a huge thing. And I also think that's why so many of you all seem to be like maturing into newer things in this season of y'all's lives, because like y'all were really in this, like the pressure was up in how y'all were doing ministry, and it was such an aggressive way of doing it that y'all experienced a lot. So now it's kind of like, all right, what's next? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can we take this to a different level or another level? So that's just the outside looking in.
No, man, and that's real. But I think that a big piece of that was not just the discipleship part, while that was a major component. Another major part of that was access and ability to be able to lead almost prematurely. Man, I was 17 leading a band. Under Pastor Doug's leadership. Now, a lot of it, I made a lot of piss poor mistakes, like, you know what I mean? But I was able to drop the ball in a safe place. And because I was so young, it was like a lot of it kind of got chalked up to my what's the name. Now, from the pressure cooker standpoint, like there was what was communicated from my entire ministry was that like there's a lot on the line. Like this is not just some lighthearted stuff. So be intentional about your communication. Be prayerful about your leadership. Be creative with your leadership. But like folk are gonna look at the church and Jesus away based on your leadership. And while sometimes I feel like that was a lot of pressure, I think that it helped shape me for today and for now, because man, it's huge. But giving those same young leaders opportunities to lead early on, so that once they do it, like you said, once they do hit their mid-20s, not that they're a vet, but like they've had quite a few reps at that point, to be able to shepherd, to be able to care. Man, I was able to lead groups and Bible studies, and they'll prepare for different conferences. Man, it was great.
Man, you bring up a really good point, because, and I've said this a couple of times in the past, like historically, the church has done that, right? It's only in the last, 100 years or so that we start telling people like, nah, you got to do this, and this, and learn these things and be, mature before you can do anything. But like the disciples, young dudes, like most of the guys who were around Jesus were young dudes. Like most of these dead theologians that we love reading about, most of them were doing these writings in their 20s and 30s. Like for a lot of history, people were like, hey, I know you're 16, but here, handle this and let's see how it goes. And I think we need more of that. Like we need more of trusting in the youth. And this might bring up a problem, but I think the reason why people don't trust youth is because they don't want to do the work of loving and caring for them as they're making mistakes. They want somebody who can just manage it. Whereas like the leaders in your life are like, no, you can manage it, and I'm going to care for you and develop you over this time. And maybe there are a lot of pastors doing that now. I don't know. But I've seen...
and I wouldn't even say... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I've seen the opposite.
Yeah, but like... And I wouldn't even... I don't know if I would say even 100 years, because I think when we started pushing deeper and deeper into this more attractional stuff, and like Sunday morning had to be rhythmic and perfect and no distractions, and I see the benefit and the necessity of that in a lot of spaces. I get that, but what that did was that pulled away how I came up. Yo, just play third keys. Yo, just preach 8 o'clock service. So give me what or hey, listen, lead this Bible study on this day. Now it's if it can't be done with a high level of excellence, it can't be done. And I'm like, yo, these young folk, we got to get the reps from somewhere. Now this is my frustration right this second, especially as it pertains in this worship space. We have been seeking the best of the best of the best for the last 20 plus years and have done no development. We've been trying to make albums and all the rest, kind of have all the Hillsong stuff, the elevation stuff. Now every church want to make a doggone album, but have not spent any time with anyone under the age of 21 to help them along in their journey to be able to develop in this worship space. And now I get calls every single doggone day from pastors saying like, yo, do you got anybody? You know anybody? Do you got anybody? Do you know anybody? And I'm saying, no, there isn't nobody because we haven't done no care and development. And I said this at a conference last week. I said, listen, and this is rough and I don't have no hard stats and no hard data. But if the worship leader has a second amount of time on the microphone on a Sunday morning, but the lead pastor gets retreats, care, sabbaticals, dinner budget, like all the rest of kind of stuff, conferences on top of conferences. There's a conference going on every week this month. And the worship leader gotta do whatever, whatever internal development, whatever they can find on YouTube and XYZ. And now we're seeing the amount of pastors that are no longer in ministry in the last 5 to 7 years.
Ooh,
man,
they have been
expedited. Yeah, and you're wondering why there's no worship leaders or worship pastors or someone able to care in that space, because we have not done the work to do the development. So that's where I'm like, yo, we need to start a process of development, not even for our church now, but if we want to see our churches continue, we need to develop now for the next generation, because man, at the rate that we're going, there's going to be fewer and fewer and fewer. So man, I was at a worship conference yesterday. I'm sorry. The last thing was, I was at a worship conference yesterday. I'm not even going to say what it was and who was there, but based on who was there, they wrote half of the music that we sing on Sundays right now. And it was an intimate opportunity to be able to sit down with them. And it was it was good, but only a few people registered for this conference. And it showed me, and most of them flew in from out of town. So folk from all over the country are flying in to go down to this conference, but it wasn't that many of them. I'm like, man, if you get opportunity with with 3 of the guys that wrote most of the Christian music that we sing today, and no one is showing up for these conferences, that shows me that there's a drought, one, or there's a lack of time or preparation to be able to go to some of these things. So it's crazy, man. I digress.
I got 2 things. One, it's not a question, it's a comment. Trev said that he was at a worship conference last weekend. He should have said he was at his worship conference last weekend because he hosted a worship conference, he and his wife. And we got it. I don't have no round of applause, but I got an air horn. I'll give you one of those.
Hey, I take it.
The second thing is, I have a question. I agree with most of what you're saying about all of that. And I champion that. When you say we, do you mean like churches of color, churches like urban churches, or do you mean in general? And the reason I ask that is because we've heard of like these Hillsong schools, and we've heard of these Bethel schools and these worship conferences that look very CCM-ish, right? And we also have seen in the last few years that some of the most popular worship songs that are being put out, I don't know if I should say worship, but I will say worship, that are being put out have musicians and singers that look like us but aren't really in the churches that we're in, if you get where I'm going. Yeah. So it almost feels like you have to leave minority churches or black churches or urban churches to go to a bigger church a mega church that's going to be more, mainstream CCM in order to get any type of exposure or looks, unless you're in the gospel space, which is a whole nother conversation. What would you say about that?
A few things. One, to answer your first question, I think that is church plants, period. I think it's this new phase of church planting.
Yeah.
Period. High level excellence, performance, XYZ. But to the other piece is I would associate that with even the convo with like Carmelo Anthony of going to Syracuse over and above, or even some of these high school players that would choose to go to a school that they'll get more looks at over and above HBCU. So a similar conversation.
You know what I'm saying? Like again, I agree with you.
Because we do not resource the creative department. And we want amazing worship. And I'm saying, when I say we, I'm saying church plant in general, but also a lot of, listen, man, we have not spent enough time, energy, and resources to be able to develop and champion people in these churches. But I think the other thing is which is not a knock on the church or the planters, is that there's just this big push for artistry and to become an artist and to become a songwriter. And they'll go to those churches to be able to get those looks because they're trying to be an artist and not trying to be a worship leader. And I think that is because we did this hard push to do more albums instead of development over the last 20 years. So like, of course, people want to move into a space where they're going to be honored, a space where they're going to be seen, a space where they're going to be heard, and their gifts are going to be valued over and above do your little worship crap and your little worship stuff, and it's just sing a couple songs on a Sunday and XYZ. And I said this at my conference, like, yo, y'all don't know how much time and energy goes into picking and laboring over a few songs on a Sunday morning, from prayer to Bible verses to man, it's a whole. I got a whole thing. It's trevorchin.com/reimagining worship. But I'm saying we have, we haven't, man. The church hasn't, and folk go to these churches because they'll get more looks. They're larger churches. Their stuff will be championed over there. They'll get a bigger stage. That's another big thing. They'll get a much bigger stage. They'll get more experience in click tracks and in tracking and singing to a track. Yeah. So there's there's a lot of reasons, but also the last thing I'll say is, we're asking people to come help build something, a vision that God put on our hearts, in church planting. Like, you know what I mean? That's what it is. And oftentimes, because of the church's track record, creatives don't want to come support to do yet another thing that you're going to take credit for, that we're not going to get no money for, that we're not going to get no support for, that we're not going to get no care for. And we've done all this work to help develop a ministry, whether it be in the photography space or the website or worship or whatever. And I don't want to sound like a you know what I mean, a little kid that just got beat up like that.
No, you
that's
not
the case.
Like that, but it's all good.
But man, like, yo, like, what does it look like to wade in the water with someone, who's a great singer and keyboard player but struggles with, whatever. What does it look? Yeah. What does discipleship look like? What does time and energy and care look like? I mean, how often have you considered? Because here's the thing. And not on some Enneagram stuff, but like, creatives are, what makes them great in their creative spaces is the emotional connection that they have with the art and their mind and their heart that they kind of create. But also makes them in practical settings sometimes, what I call it, emotionally fluid. That's the word I use. Emotionally fluid. High highs and low lows. You know what I mean? And in the ministry space, that can get exhausting, because especially in the church plant space, like, I don't always have the time. I can't sit down with you every single day for hours upon hours and just walk through this and talk through that and XYZ. So, but I think we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and now we don't do it at all. Now it's like, I'll see you on Sunday and make sure the stuff is tight.
I've started going to rehearsals. Or I try to go to as many rehearsals as possible. And not because I'm like there doing any major like shepherding or anything like that, but I just want our people to know that I'm present and Like they have access, and there's if there's questions to be asked, then I'm there. And then honestly, I'm a musician, so I get an opportunity to jump in and kind of give pointers, but not from a musical standpoint as much as a spiritual standpoint, more often than not. And that has actually grown me as a pastor, like getting to see, because right now we're all volunteered. Well, we have a worship coordinator, but most people are volunteers, and they've never been pushed or stretched or anything like that in that space. So to kind of see that happen and then like witness it outside of Sunday morning has been a blessing to me. And I question how many, and I'm not saying this because I have just started this new habit that I'm not even like killing it with, but I wonder how many pastors are actually that integrated with their worship departments or their worship leaders or even their volunteers, right? Like, because you might have your worship leader at the staff meeting or, whatever, but like, what about, the girl who sings every week and is not getting paid anything?
Yeah. And yes, 100%. But on the other hand, I'll also argue I can sound like that spoiled little kid because of the seat that I sat in. I sat in a 2-guy seat, you know what I mean? Or I sat in a worship guy seat, to where my primary focus is one specific department. Well, as a worship pastor, it was just the creative stuff was my responsibility. I'm not worried about sermon prep on a week-to-week basis. I'm not worried about major big counseling things that need to happen at the church. I'm not necessarily worried about, not that I'm not worried about it, but like the finances and all that being the thing. So there are things, which is why I kind of want to advocate, not even to segue, but like that's why I advocate for a 2-guy or a secondary, like a second in command, even if they're a volunteer, like even for that pastor for the pastor right now who's fussing at me right this second on their computer screen. Also, well, you don't know what I got to go through and da-da-da. I do. But either way, I'm not saying that you need to have that kind of intentionality with every single person in your church, but like at least have it with a few.
Yeah.
Develop, do discipleship. So like even with you got a worship coordinator, you got a worship leader. Yeah, do a high level investment in them so they can do the investment in their team. But there needs to be investment somewhere.
That's good. That's good, man. I needed that reminder personally. But I also think a lot of church planters, church leaders need to hear that as a church planter is forming out their plan. We all been there. You write your prospectus up, get all these things going. They tell you here are the positions you need to hire for. What goes beyond just, writing a number down for the person who's going to lead worship? Like, what should a church planter be looking to invest in the person who's going to help craft that worship experience? And like, I know, like you mentioned earlier, you have been in a position where you can almost be you were like a counterpart with the lead pastor, right? How can we see more of that happen in the church planting space?
Yeah. So, not by way of plug, but I'm going to communicate it, but my situation. But about 2 years ago, I started the idea of this thing called Reimagining Worship, and it was to be a community of people that could collaborate with resources, with musicians, with singers, with other kind of stuff. And we just kicked off our first conference last weekend, and phenomenal. But like the purpose of it was it was called the Healthy Creatives. Man, I gotta show you the shirt, bro. I made the shirt. The thing was fly. You'd have been proud of me on the graphic design piece. But but the purpose of it was to do the care for worship leaders and singers or creatives in the church as a whole, because I recognize that the level of care that might be needed might be somewhat out of reach in whatever season that your church might be going through. But for me is, if you can't do it, then try to figure out how you can outsource the care, because that's the other piece for me was I wanted to do this because I've sat in the seat and I can speak the same language. Like I feel because of my time and investment in this worship creative arts space in the local church. I want to highlight that in the local church, for the record. That's a whole nother segue, but because of the time in, I want to be, I've been intentional to be able to say, you know what, like these are pinpoints. How do you avoid burnout? How can you care for your heart? What are questions that you can ask yourself to find out if you are dealing with burnout? How do you develop healthy teams? How do you develop, healthy souls? How do you develop? Melissa did a workshop on healthy vocals and all the rest of it. So like there are things that you can do, even if you need to outsource them. Like there are folk like me that do coaching, that does development, that does care, and that can speak a lot of the same language. So, man, I would if you cannot be the one to do a high level, and if you don't have the difference with Pastor Doug is he knew musicians. Man, we would go to Guitar Center on Saturdays, and I would have free lessons from this dude named Daryl, who was a bad keyboard player, and he taught me. I am free, praise the Lord, I'm free. Like that was the first song Daryl taught me at Guitar Center for free on Saturday morning. Wow. But that was because of Pastor Doug's relationships and ear and all that kind of stuff. If you don't have that, then find someone that does, because there is someone, whether it be locally or in your community, that will have no problem with doing some kind of care and development for folk on your team. That can speak the same language, even if it's just for a leader or two. But the other big piece is like having honest conversations with those leaders around what they think they need and have some expectation management, because what happens is we'll say, hey, we want you to come in, and same thing happens for a lot of the departments but hey, we want you to come in, lead worship on Sunday. Okay. Well, now that's worship plus a rehearsal, plus now we're doing the sound, plus now we got to do inventory on the equipment to see what we got equipment wise. Now we also we get social media thrown in our laps, and then it's, when we could really go for a website update and da-da-da. And now here we are 9, 10, 11 months down the line. You ask this person to come in to serve in a volunteer space just in one department. And now they have a 25-hour-a-week volunteer role. And we haven't had any other conversations between here and there. So there's a lot of super, super practical things. A lot of them you can find on my podcast, Reimagining Worship, on Spotify. What's the name? I know. Just don't cut my stuff out neither, Byron.
No, I don't cut nothing out.
I'm playing. But nah, man. Yeah. But definitely find someone that can do the time. They need to. Yeah. for lead pastors, like the general soul care checkup stuff, I think is good if you're outsourcing some of the creative development stuff, because a lot of pastors just don't even know where to start. You, like you said, you're different. You're a musician, so that's a whole. You know what I mean? You came up in music. You know what I mean? Shout out to Homecoming, by the way. I seen the little flicks, but yeah, man. So yeah, but just the intentional development, clear communications, clear expectations. Help them develop their own boundaries. Job descriptions are easy. Yeah, I mean, weekly check-ins to see how they're doing, and then help them figure out how they can develop creatively outside.
Yeah. Let me ask you to take which is probably impossible, take your creative hat off for a second and put your pastoral hat on again. I have met and also can relate to a lot of pastors who they feel burned by creatives and musicians, because just as I do believe that churches and pastors mistreat creatives and musicians. I've seen it happen a million times over. I've also seen the other side of it, of like creatives and musicians, not as many singers, but creatives and musicians really just looking to do a gig. Like, how would you speak to or encourage like the church planter, the pastor, the leader who has had a hard experience with a creative and is a little hesitant to like jump back into a space where they give a lot to a creative?
Yeah, that's a good question. One, to not abdicate responsibility. This is somewhat the fruit of what we've been dealing with over the last X amount of years, especially in we've turned the church into a gigging culture, because the backbiting church down the street ask my musician how much they getting paid. They say $100 on a Sunday by way of stipend, not even pay. Well, look, if you come over here, I'll give you 125, and then pass it down the block from him. Say, I'll give you 150. Now here we are, generations down now, and we're paying a lot of money because the church and a lot of, and I'm not making the church a scapegoat or in saying that musicians are alleviated in any of that stuff, but this is the fruit of a lot of that. But on the other hand, man, in church planting is crazy. Like, the church you have now ain't the church you had a year ago. You know what I mean? Like, people are, and I don't want to say downplay the people are coming and going, but like, do you stop doing development? Do you stop discipling? Do you stop doing outreach? Do you stop caring for folks? And I'm like, I reckon, man, I've been burnt by creatives too, but I've been burnt by regular folks. I've been burnt by black folks. I've been burnt by white folks in the pastoral space. Like, we've done it all. And I think that disappointment and heartbreak has been a part of the pastoral journey, if I'm honest with you. And especially if we're following the ways of Jesus, like, he had folk that turned his back on him, and it's difficult. It's difficult, but someone has to be the one to do the work of redemption. Someone has to be the one to do the work of chasing after. So, man, be encouraged, stick with it, go find them. But start early. It's crazy. Start earlier. You know what I mean? Get a high school student. You know what I mean? Work with them. You know what I mean? Work to disciple and develop, because I couldn't imagine if I was further along down the line and had a lot more experience. I'm wondering if, you know what I mean, what that would look like between Pastor Doug and I and some of that development stuff. So, but stay in the fight, because that's what it is.
All right, man. You've blessed me tremendously. I just have 2 questions to wrap up, and then we'll get you moving on to your next space. One, you've been in Jersey, Philly, and Baltimore. I'm going to do something I should never do. Which is the best out of the 3?
Baltimore, hands down.
Okay, Baltimore, hands down. All right,
Baltimore,
that's where you at right
down.
now. You got.
Listen. I told Charlie early on. I guess I shouldn't tell my security question, but one of the security questions is, where you want to retire? And I wrote down Baltimore. That's where I'm at with it.
Okay, I love it. Last but not least, I just want to give you another shout out about Reimagining Worship. If you are a worship leader or even a pastor, I'm a part of the group. I'm not a worship leader, but I am a pastor, and I want to be able to pass on some of the wisdom and information well. So, man, check out Reimagining Worship. There's a Facebook group that worship leaders can join. Church planters, you may want to kind of take a peek into the group if you can. All of that. And also, if you want to hear more about what Trev is doing, what's your email? What's your website again? TrevorChin.com? Is that it?
Yeah, TrevorChin.com. Instagram is T-Chin Creates. TikTok is T-Chin Create. Well, I don't know what it is. I was being facetious about that one. This is one of them. I don't even know how to use the doggone thing. I'm getting old, bro. And the Facebook group is Reimagining Worship. The podcast is Reimagining Worship. Everything is Reimagining Worship. You'll see everything is going to be black and green. But it's not just for, to Byron's point, man, it's not just for pastors, for worship leaders and creatives, but it's about resourcing the church in the creative space as a whole. So a lot of things on there, like how can pastors engage their worship leaders? How can they engage in soul care? How can they develop boundaries for them? So a lot of the stuff is for pastors on how to communicate with your teams, and for those creatives in that group to be able to take it back to their church leadership and stuff like that. So
sounds good. Well, we're gonna have to get another interview at some point, because we ain't even talk about the Rick Ross track. We ain't talked about.
I'm still getting money on it too, baby. I still got a check.
Your new career and all of that, man. But just know this, man. I've been blessed by your ministry. I've been blessed by your life. Been blessed by your family, man.
Likewise, bro.
Got mad love for you, man. Yo, check out everything Trev has done and put his hands on. I hope you were encouraged by his story. Continue to rock with us at Tell the Story Doc, and don't forget to live all of your life in Jesus Christ. God bless.